Archer Blackwood's day began like any other, with the satisfying ping of another $1 billion added to his net worth. As CEO of Blackwood Enterprises, the 35-year-old tech mogul had the world at his fingertips. Or so he thought. The sleek glass walls of his penthouse office overlooking Manhattan offered a view most would kill for, but Archer barely noticed it anymore. He stood by the window, his reflection stern against the cityscape backdrop, phone pressed to his ear. "Absolutely not," Archer said, his voice resonating with the confidence of a man accustomed to getting his way. "I don't care what the board thinks, Harrison. The merger goes through on my terms or not at all." Harrison Winters, his long-suffering COO and oldest friend, sighed audibly through the speaker. "The board isn't budging, Arch. They've given an ultimatum." "I don't respond to ultimatums," Archer replied, straightening his custom Tom Ford tie, a gift from some girlfriend or another. He couldn't remember which. "This one's different." Harrison hesitated, his usually unflappable tone wavering. "It's about your grandfather's clause." The mention of his grandfather sent an ice-cold shiver down Archer's spine. Walter Blackwood Sr. had been a traditionalist in every sense of the word, including the archaic codicil he'd added to his will, the one that stipulated Archer must be married by his 36th birthday to maintain controlling interest in Blackwood Enterprises. "That's prehistoric nonsense, Harrison. No court would—" "Our legal team confirms it's ironclad," Harrison interrupted. "Your birthday is in 3 months. The board is leveraging this to force your hand on the merger. Either you find a wife, or they gain controlling interest and approve the merger anyway." The phone nearly cracked in Archer's grip. "Find me a loophole." "We've looked. There isn't one." The office door swung open, revealing Bianca Rutherford, daughter of the board's chairman and the most insufferable woman Archer had ever met. With her impeccable blonde coiffure and predatory smile, she was exactly the kind of person Archer avoided at all costs. "Archer, darling," she purred, uninvited and unwelcome. "Daddy thought we should discuss our arrangement." Archer's eyes narrowed. "What arrangement?" Behind Bianca stood the only ray of sunshine in his corporate fortress, his executive assistant, Mia Chen. Petite, efficient, and perpetually armed with his preferred espresso, Mia had been running his professional life for 5 years without a single complaint. Today, she mouthed, "I'm sorry," over Bianca's shoulder, her warm brown eyes filled with genuine concern. "Our engagement, of course," Bianca declared, flashing a diamond the size of a small planet on her finger. "Daddy and the board think it's the perfect solution. You need a wife, and I need—" Her eyes swept over his office, his view, his empire, a suitable match. Archer felt trapped, a sensation entirely foreign to him. His gaze darted to Mia, who was quietly arranging documents on his desk, her head bowed, her presence somehow grounding amidst the chaos. "We haven't agreed to anything," he said coldly. Bianca laughed, the sound like glass breaking. "Oh, but we have. The announcement goes out tomorrow." She dropped a folder on his desk. "The prenup. Do read it, darling. It's quite generous. To me." As Bianca sauntered out, Mia approached his desk, her movements careful, like someone approaching a wounded animal. "Mr. Blackwood," she said softly, using his formal title despite years of him asking her to call him Archer. "Your 3 o'clock is waiting, and I've taken the liberty of scheduling an emergency meeting with legal at 4. For the first time, Archer really looked at Mia, not as the efficient machine that kept his life running smoothly, but as a woman. Her dark hair was pulled back in a practical bun, her clothes professional but unremarkable. Yet there was something in her quiet dignity that called to him. How had he never noticed the intelligence in her eyes, or the gentle curve of her lips when she almost smiled? "Mia," he said, surprising himself with the softness in his voice. "What would you do?" She blinked, clearly startled by the personal question. I think sometimes the most valuable things in life aren't in contracts or boardrooms, Mr. Blackwood, Before he could process her words, his phone buzzed with Harrison's voice. "There is one other option, but you're not going to like it." Archer felt a headache brewing behind his eyes. "Try me." "The clause doesn't specify who you have to marry, just that you must be married." As Harrison's words sank in, Archer's gaze drifted back to Mia, who was quietly organizing his chaotic desk with a care and precision that suddenly seemed profoundly meaningful. An idea, wild, inappropriate, and possibly brilliant, began to take shape. The rain pattered against the windows of Archer's penthouse as he paced the hardwood floors, his mind racing through scenarios like a chess grandmaster contemplating moves. The space, all sleek lines and minimalist design, reflected nothing of its owner's current chaotic thoughts. 3 days had passed since Bianca's ambush. 3 days of dodging, calls from board members and receiving increasingly smug texts from his would-be fiancée. The prenup sat unopened on his coffee table, a ticking time bomb disguised as legal paperwork. The doorbell rang, its chime reverberating through the cavernous apartment. Archer glanced at his watch, 9:30 p.m. He wasn't expecting anyone. He opened the door to find Mia standing there, clutching a leather portfolio and looking distinctly uncomfortable outside the confines of their professional relationship. "Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice steadier than her expression. "I apologize for the intrusion, but I've been working on something I thought couldn't wait until morning." Archer stepped aside, gesturing her in with uncharacteristic warmth. "You've never been an intrusion, Mia." She entered cautiously, as though crossing some invisible boundary, which he supposed she was. In 5 years, she'd never been to his home. "Can I get you something? Wine?" he offered, suddenly feeling like a gracious host rather than her demanding boss. "No, thank you." Mia settled at the edge of his sofa, posture perfect, as if she were still at her desk. "I've been reviewing the merger documents in your grandfather's clause." She opened her portfolio, revealing meticulously organized papers. Archer sank down beside her, close enough to catch the subtle scent of her perfume, something light and floral that seemed at odds with her all-business demeanor. "And?" he prompted. "There's no explicit requirement about whom you marry or how long the marriage must last," she explained, pointing to specific passages she'd highlighted. "The stipulation merely requires you to be legally married by your 36th birthday, and remain so during the shareholder vote on the merger." Archer leaned closer, their shoulders almost touching as he studied the document. "So, a temporary arrangement could work." "Theoretically," Mia nodded, tucking a stray strand of hair behind her ear. The gesture was so human, so unlike her usual composed efficiency, that Archer found himself transfixed. "Mia," he said suddenly, an idea crystallizing with startling clarity. "Marry me." The portfolio slipped from her hands, papers scattering across his imported Italian marble floor. What? "It makes perfect sense," he continued, excitement building with each word. "We set clear terms. A business arrangement lasting exactly 6 months. You'll receive significant compensation, of course. Enough to fund that bookstore. You mentioned wanting to open someday." Her eyes widened. "You remembered that?" "Of course I did," he said. Though truthfully, he'd forgotten he remembered it until this moment. A casual comment she'd made years ago over late-night takeout during a particularly grueling quarter. Mia stood abruptly, gathering her scattered papers with trembling hands. "Mr. Blackwood, this is—" "Archer," he corrected, rising to help her. Their fingers brushed, and he felt an unexpected jolt of awareness. "If we're discussing marriage, you should probably use my first name." "This is inappropriate," she finished, clutching the papers to her chest like a shield. "More inappropriate than me marrying Bianca Rutherford for corporate politics? You know me better than anyone, Mia. It would be a purely professional arrangement." "That's precisely why it's a terrible idea," she countered, finding her voice. "I've spent 5 years, building a career based on competence and professionalism. How will it look if I suddenly marry my billionaire boss? Archer hadn't considered this. He wasn't accustomed to thinking about how things look to others, a privilege of his position. I understand, he said, surprising himself with his sincerity. But consider the alternative. If Bianca and her father gain control, hundreds of jobs will be lost in the restructuring. The company I've built, that we've built together, will become something unrecognizable. Mia's expression softened slightly. We? Yes, we, he affirmed, suddenly aware of how integral she'd been to his success. You've been by my side through every crisis, every victory. Who else would I trust with something this important? Charged silence filled the room as Mia visibly wrestled with her thoughts. The rain outside intensified, mirroring the emotional storm brewing between them. 6 months, she finally said, her voice barely audible above the rainfall. And a legally binding contract stating this is a business arrangement with clear terms for dissolution. Archer felt an unexpected surge of elation. Absolutely. And I want something else, she added, her chin lifting with determination. During those 6 months, you allow me to implement the employee welfare program I proposed last year, the one you said was unnecessarily generous. He smiled despite himself. Even now, she was negotiating for others, rather than herself. Done. I'm not finished, Mia continued, finding her rhythm. No one can know this is an arrangement. We present ourselves as a genuine couple who've been secretly dating. Otherwise, the clause won't hold. Archer considered this. That means appearances together, public displays of affection. Yes, she agreed, a blush creeping up her neck. Think of it as an extended business negotiation. With kissing, he added, his lips quirking. For the first time that evening, Mia smiled. A real smile that transformed her face and made Archer's breath catch unexpectedly. With convincing kissing. Mr. Bell. Archer. He extended his hand formally, as though they were closing a business deal. Partners? Mia hesitated, then placed her small hand in his larger one. Partners. As they shook hands, a flash of lightning illuminated the room, casting their shadows against the wall. 2 separate silhouettes momentarily appearing as one. Neither noticed Archer's phone lighting up with Bianca's incoming call, nor did they see the text that followed. Darling, I've moved up the engagement announcement. Hope you don't mind. See tomorrow's Wall Street Journal. Blackwood ear to wed. Rutherford heiress screamed the headline of the Wall Street Journal's society page. Archer hurled the newspaper across his office with a precision that spoke of years of repressed rage finally finding an outlet. I take it you've seen the announcement, Harrison said dryly, leaning against the doorframe of Archer's office. It's a declaration of war, Archer growled, loosening his tie with a sharp tug. She can't just... The office door burst open as Mia rushed in, her normally perfect composure visibly shaken. We have a problem, she announced, clutching her tablet like a lifeline. Another one? Archer muttered. Bianca has scheduled a press conference for noon today to discuss your whirlwind romance, Mia explained, her voice admirably steady despite the flush on her cheeks. She's already outside with her father and 3 board members. Harrison looked between them, eyebrows raised. What's the play here, Arch? Archer's gaze locked with Mia's. A silent understanding passed between them. The moment of truth had arrived sooner than anticipated. Get legal up here, Archer commanded, and clear my schedule for the day. Harrison nodded, though confusion lingered in his expression. What exactly are you planning? A counteroffensive, Archer replied, already removing the bespoke jacket from his chair and sliding it on. Mia, a moment, please. When Harrison left, closing the door behind him, Mia approached Archer's desk with the same caution as that night in his penthouse, like she was walking on ground that might disappear beneath her. Are you sure about this? She asked quietly. Once we go public, there's no turning back. Archer studied her face, the face he'd seen almost every day for 5 years without truly seeing. Today she wore her hair down, the dark waves softening her features. He wondered if this was a conscious choice for their charade or simply a coincidence. "I should be asking you that," he replied. "Your reputation is at stake too." Mia squared, her shoulders, a gesture he recognized from countless board meetings and difficult clients. "I've drafted a press release announcing our engagement. It's ready to go whenever you are." That was efficient. "It's my job to anticipate your needs," she said, then blushed at the unintended intimacy of her words. Archer moved around the desk until he stood directly before her, close enough that anyone watching through the glass walls would assume they were having a lover's conversation. "There's something we haven't practiced," he said, his voice dropping to a timbre he usually reserved for actual romantic encounters. Mia swallowed visibly. "What's that?" "This." He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The simple gesture felt strangely significant. "The small things couples do without thinking. They'll be watching us for those tells." "I've observed enough office romances to know the signs," Mia replied, her attempt at clinical detachment betrayed by the slight tremor in her words. "Show me," Archer challenged softly. Something flickered in Mia's eyes. Determination, perhaps, or defiance. She reached up and straightened his tie with practiced ease, but let her fingers linger at his collar. "Your tie was crooked," she explained, her voice barely above a whisper. The air between them seemed to crackle with unacknowledged tension. For a moment, Archer forgot this was pretend, that they were rehearsing for a performance. His hand moved of its own accord to the small of her back, drawing her imperceptibly closer. A sharp knock shattered the moment. "Legal's here," Harrison announced, eyeing them curiously as they sprang apart. "And so is the circus downstairs. Security reports Bianca's brought enough press to start a small war." "Perfect," Archer said, his business persona sliding seamlessly back into place. "Let's give them a show they won't forget." 20 minutes later, Archer stood at the podium in Blackwood Enterprises' main lobby, cameras flashing like lightning in a storm. Bianca Rutherford, resplendent in a crimson dress that matched her perfectly painted lips, stood to the side, her triumphant smile frozen in place. "Thank you all for coming," Archer began, his media-trained voice projecting just the right amount of authority. "I understand there's been some confusion about my personal life that I'd like to address." Bianca stepped forward, hand extended, as if to join him at the podium. Archer smiled at her, a smile that didn't reach his eyes, and continued. "While Ms. Rutherford is certainly an impressive woman, I'm afraid there's been a misunderstanding. You see, my heart is already taken." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled press. Bianca's smile twisted into something ugly. "For the past year, I've been in a relationship that I've kept private for professional reasons," Archer continued, his gaze sweeping the room. "But recent events have forced my hand." On cue, Mia emerged from the elevator, wearing a simple but elegant dress that Archer had never seen before. She walked toward him with measured steps, her face a perfect mask of composed affection. "Ladies and gentlemen," Archer announced, extending his hand to Mia, who took it with convincing familiarity. "I'm delighted to introduce you to the actual future Mrs. Blackwood, Ms. Mia Chen." The camera flashes intensified to a near-blinding level. Bianca let out an audible gasp that turned into what sounded suspiciously like a hiss. "This is preposterous." Gerald Rutherford, Bianca's father and head of the board, sputtered. "You can't possibly expect us to believe that I fell in love with the most competent, intelligent, and compassionate woman I've ever met?" Archer interrupted smoothly. "And yet, here we are." He turned to Mia, whose expression betrayed nothing of the turmoil he knew she must be feeling. With subtle pressure on her hand, he telegraphed his next move. She gave an almost imperceptible nod. Archer leaned down and kissed her, a kiss meant to be brief and convincing. But the moment their lips met, something unexpected happened. What started as a performance piece shifted into something that felt frighteningly genuine. Her lips were soft, yielding, and somehow familiar, as if he'd been waiting to kiss her without realizing it. When they parted, the look of genuine surprise in Mia's eyes mirrored what he felt. They'd crossed a line that no contract could define. "I believe that answers any questions about my romantic status," Archer said to the stunned audience, his voice betraying none of his inner turbulence. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my fiancé and I have a wedding to plan." As they walked away, Mia's hand firmly in his, Archer caught a glimpse of Bianca's face contorted with rage and felt a fleeting moment of satisfaction. But it was quickly replaced by an unsettling realization. The warmth of Mia's hand in his felt more real than anything in his carefully constructed world. Behind them, Harrison watched with a knowing smile, shaking his head slowly. "This," he muttered to himself, "is going to be fascinating." "You kissed me," Mia said the moment Archer's penthouse elevator doors closed behind them. It wasn't an accusation so much as a statement of bewildered fact. "That was the plan," Archer replied, loosening his tie and avoiding her gaze. "Convincing kissing, as you put it. That was not in the script." Mia paced the expansive living room, her heels clicking rhythmically against the hardwood floors. "We were supposed to announce our engagement and schedule a formal photo opportunity next week, not create a spectacle." 2 weeks had passed since their impromptu press conference, and the media frenzy had only intensified. Der Blackwood Bride was trending on social media, and 3 different tabloids had offered 6-figure sums for exclusive wedding coverage. "Bianca forced our hand," Archer said, pouring 2 glasses of scotch and offering one to Mia. "And admit it, seeing her face when I introduced you was worth it." A reluctant smile tugged at Mia's lips as she accepted the drink. She did look like she'd swallowed a lemon soaked in vinegar. Their shared laughter eased the tension that had been simmering between them since the kiss, as Archer had come. To think of it, with unnecessary capital letters. He'd kissed hundreds of women in his life, many of them far more conventionally beautiful or experienced than Mia, yet none had left him so unsettled. "The board meeting is tomorrow," Mia reminded him, settling onto his sofa with the familiar focus that preceded every major business decision. "Gerald Rutherford has requested a private audience with you beforehand." "No doubt to question the convenient timing of our relationship," Archer mused, sitting beside her. Closer than necessary, he realized too late. "We need to get our story straight," Mia said, pulling out her tablet. "Always prepared, always professional, even when planning an elaborate deception. When did we fall in love? How did it happen?" They'll be looking for inconsistencies. Archer studied her profile as she typed notes. The evening sunlight streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows cast a golden glow on her skin. He'd never noticed the light dusting of freckles across her nose, or the way her eyelashes cast tiny shadows on her cheeks when she looked down. "A year ago," he said suddenly. "The Tokyo trip." Mia's fingers paused over the screen. "Why Tokyo?" "Remember, that night at the Sakura restaurant? When the deal with Nakamura was falling apart, and we stayed up strategizing until dawn?" As he spoke, the memory crystallized with unexpected clarity. "You wore a blue dress. You remember what I was wearing?" Mia looked genuinely surprised. "I remember thinking it was the first time I'd seen you in anything but your work clothes." The admission felt strangely intimate. "And you convinced me to try takoyaki from that street vendor even though I was certain I'd get food poisoning." A soft smile played at her lips. "You ate 6 portions and then insisted we find the vendor again the next day. See? The perfect origin story. A moonlit night in Tokyo, street food, and saving a $1 billion deal together. Archer leaned back, satisfied. Even I would believe we fell in love that night. Something flickered in Mia's eyes. Something Archer couldn't quite decipher. It's plausible, she conceded, making notes. But what about our first kiss? They'll ask. The air between them thickened with the memory of their very real first kiss before dozens of cameras. New Year's Eve, Archer supplied, his voice lower than he intended. At the company party. You were wearing that silver dress that caught the light when you moved. Mia's eyebrows rose. I didn't attend last year's New Year's party. I had the flu, remember? You sent over your personal doctor and a ridiculous amount of soup. The year before, then, Archer amended smoothly, though he was unsettled by how clearly he remembered her absence last year, how the party had felt oddly hollow without her efficient presence at his side. Fine. New Year's Eve, 2 years ago. We snuck away to your office balcony and... She blushed, unable to complete the sentence. And I kissed you under the fireworks, Archer finished, the fictional scene playing out with vivid detail in his mind. You tasted like champagne and possibilities. Mia's blush deepened. That's very specific. The best lies contain elements of truth, he said, echoing advice his grandfather had once given him. Advice he'd previously applied only to business negotiations. A charged silence stretched between them, broken only when Mia's phone rang. She answered with visible relief. Yes, Harrison, he's right here. She passed the phone to Archer, their fingers brushing in a way that suddenly seemed fraught with significance. The Rutherfords are making moves, Harrison said without preamble. They've called an emergency meeting with 3 key shareholders. And there's something else. They've hired investigators. Archer's jaw tightened. What kind of investigators? The kind that dig into personal lives, Harrison replied grimly. They're looking for proof your engagement is a sham. Archer met Mia's questioning gaze. We'll have to be more convincing, he said, both to Harrison and to her. After ending the call, he explained the situation. Mia's professional facade cracked slightly, revealing genuine concern. How far are we willing to take this charade? She asked quietly. As far as necessary, Archer replied with characteristic determination. Then, more gently, are you having second thoughts? No, she said after a beat. I made a commitment. I'm seeing it through. Archer found himself unexpectedly moved by her loyalty. Then we need to accelerate our timeline. Move in with me. Mia nearly choked on her scotch. Excuse me? They'll be watching us, Mia. What engaged couple lives separately when they work in the same building? It doesn't add up. She sat down, her glass with deliberate care. That wasn't part of our agreement. Neither were private investigators, Archer countered. We adapt or we fail. Isn't that what you always tell me when markets shift unexpectedly? The corner of her mouth twitched in reluctant acknowledgement of her own words being used against her. I would need to maintain some personal space, a separate bedroom. Of course, he agreed quickly, ignoring an unexpected twinge of disappointment. This is still a business arrangement. And I'll need to bring Austin, she added. Archer frowned. Who's Austin? For the first time that evening, Mia laughed, a genuine, unguarded sound that transformed her face. My cat, named after Jane Austen, not the city in Texas. You've worked for me for 5 years and I didn't know you had a cat, Archer realized aloud, struck by how little he knew about the woman who managed every aspect of his professional life. There's a lot you don't know about me, Mr. Blackwood. The formality was deliberate, a gentle reminder of the boundaries they were rapidly dismantling. I'm beginning to see that, he admitted, and I think it's time for that to change. If we're going to convince the world we're in love, I should at least know your favorite color. Blue, she replied without hesitation. Dark blue, like the ocean at night, and yours is gray. How did you? Every suit you've ever specifically requested has been gray. Your car is gray. Your private jet's interior. Gray. She smiled at his surprise. I pay attention. It's my job. Is that all it is? He asked before he could stop himself. A job? The question hung between them, heavier than its simple phrasing suggested. Mia's expression softened into something vulnerable and unfamiliar. It was, she said quietly, until you kissed me in front of the entire New York press corps. Before Archer could process the implications of her answer, his phone buzzed with an incoming text. It was from an unknown number, but the content made his blood run cold. Nice performance, Blackwood. But we both know the truth. Tick-tock. B. He showed the message to Mia, whose face paled slightly. She's not going to make this easy, is she? Mia whispered. No, Archer agreed, finding Mia's hand and lacing his fingers through hers. A gesture meant to reassure, but which somehow felt like crossing another invisible line. But neither will we. Domestic life with Mia Chen was nothing, like Archer had imagined. For one thing, her cat Austin, a dignified gray Maine Coon with judgmental yellow eyes, had immediately claimed Archer's favorite reading chair as his exclusive territory. For another, Mia's presence had transformed his minimalist penthouse into something that felt dangerously close to a home. Small changes accumulated like evidence in a case file. Fresh flowers on the dining table, a collection of dog-eared classic novels on his previously pristine shelves, the scent of jasmine tea lingering in the kitchen each morning. Most disturbing of all was how quickly he'd grown accustomed to these changes, even welcomed them. They'd been living together for 3 weeks, and the board meeting that would decide the fate of the merger was only days away. Their charade had held up to scrutiny so far, but Gerald Rutherford's investigators remained a constant, lurking threat. We have a problem, Mia announced, bursting into the penthouse one evening, still in her work clothes despite the late hour. Archer had left the office early for a meeting with a potential ally on the board, leaving Mia to handle the day's remaining crises. Just one? Archer quipped, looking up from his laptop where he'd been reviewing quarterly projections. I count at least 17 before breakfast most days. His attempt at humor faded when he saw Mia's expression. She was genuinely worried, a rare crack in her typically unflappable demeanor. Your mother called the office, Mia said, setting down her bag and slipping off her heels with a practiced motion that Archer found inexplicably fascinating. She's flying in tomorrow. Apparently she's furious you didn't tell her about our engagement personally. Archer winced. Eleanor Blackwood was a force of nature, a brilliant philanthropist who'd raised him single-handedly after his father's early death, and the only person on earth who could make him feel like an errant schoolboy with a single disapproving glance. She was supposed to be in Milan until next month, he muttered, running a hand through his hair. This complicates things. Mia sank onto the sofa beside him, close enough that he could smell her perfume, that light floral scent that had become as familiar to him as his own. She wants to have dinner, with both of us, tomorrow night. My mother has a supernatural ability to detect lies, Archer warned. She'll see through this in seconds. Then we don't lie, Mia replied simply. At Archer's questioning look, she elaborated. We tell a version of the truth. We've known each other for years. We respect each other. We work well together. We're committed to making this work. All true, Archer agreed. Just not in the romantic context she'll assume. Exactly. Mia smiled. That rare, genuine smile that transformed her entire face and did strange things to Archer's heartbeat. The best deceptions are built on truth, remember? He reached out without thinking, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. A gesture that had somehow become natural over the weeks of their pretense. When did you get so devious, Ms. Chen? I learned from the master, Mr. Blackwood. She retorted, her playful tone at odds with the sudden intensity in her eyes. The moment stretched between them, taut with unspoken possibilities. It was Austin who broke the spell, leaping onto the sofa and inserting himself firmly between them with an imperious meow. Your cat is a chaperone, Archer observed dryly. He has excellent timing, Mia replied, scratching Austin behind the ears. The cat purred loudly, shooting Archer a look that could only be described as smug. The next evening found them at Eleanor, Blackwood's favorite restaurant, an exclusive French establishment where the maitre d' greeted her by name and led them to the best table without hesitation. Eleanor had always been beautiful in a classic, refined way that age had only enhanced. At 62, she commanded attention without effort, her silver hair elegantly styled, her posture impeccable, her gaze penetrating. Mother, Archer greeted, her with a kiss on the cheek. You look wonderful. Save the flattery, Eleanor replied, though her eyes twinkled with affection. I'm still furious with you. Her gaze shifted to Mia, assessing her with unnerving thoroughness. So, you're the woman who's captured my son's elusive heart. Mia extended her hand with perfect poise. It's an honor to finally meet you, Mrs. Blackwood. Archer speaks of you with such admiration. Eleanor bypassed the offered hand and pulled Mia into a warm embrace instead. Darling, if you're going to be my daughter-in-law, you'll call me Eleanor. And we don't shake hands in this family. Over her mother's shoulder, Mia's eyes met Archer's in momentary panic before she recovered, returning the embrace with convincing warmth. Now, Eleanor said once they were seated, tell me everything. How did my workaholic son finally realize what was right in front of him all along? Archer nearly choked on his water. What do you mean, right in front of me? Eleanor gave him a look that suggested he was being particularly dense. Darling, every time we've spoken for the past 3 years, you've mentioned Mia at least a dozen times. Mia organized this. Mia suggested that. Mia somehow read my mind and solved a problem before I knew it existed. I've been waiting for you to come to your senses. Mia's cheeks flushed a delicate pink as she absorbed this information. Archer found himself similarly discomfited by his mother's assessment. Had he really been that transparent without even realizing it himself? Tokyo, Mia said suddenly, smoothly picking up their practiced narrative. That's when something changed between us. As she recounted their fabricated origin story, Archer watched his mother's face. Eleanor was nodding, her expression satisfied, rather than suspicious. And the secrecy? Eleanor asked, directing the question at Archer. Why hide something so obviously right? Professional boundaries, Archer replied, reaching for Mia's hand across the table in what had become a habitual gesture. We wanted to be certain before making it public. The Rutherford situation forced our hand, Mia added, her fingers intertwining with his naturally. Eleanor's eyes narrowed. Gerald Rutherford is a shark in bespoke suits, and his daughter is cut from the same cloth. I never understood why the board thought you should align with them. They don't care about the company's legacy, Archer explained. Only the profit margins. Unlike you two, Eleanor observed, her gaze moving between them thoughtfully. You both care about the people behind the numbers. It's why you work so well together. The conversation flowed easily after that, through appetizers and entrees. Archer found himself genuinely enjoying the evening, watching with growing warmth as his mother and Mia discovered shared interests in literature and botanical gardens. There was something right about seeing them together, something that made his chest tighten in an unfamiliar way. When Eleanor excused herself to greet an old friend at another table, Mia leaned closer to Archer. She believes us, she whispered, relief evident in her voice. Because we're not pretending as much as we thought, Archer replied, the realization dawning on him with startling clarity. The way Mia's eyes widened suggested she understood his meaning instantly. before they could explore this dangerous new territory, Eleanor returned, her expression troubled. Archer, darling, I've just received some concerning news. Apparently, Gerald Rutherford has been telling people that your engagement is a sham, a business arrangement to maintain control of the company. Archer felt Mia stiffen beside him, her hand tightening around his. That's ridiculous, he said, with genuine indignation. Does he think I'd marry someone I don't love for business reasons? Of course it's absurd, Eleanor agreed. Anyone who sees you together would know the truth. But rumors are dangerous, especially with the merger vote approaching. What should we do? Mia asked, her professional, problem-solving instincts kicking in despite the personal nature of the crisis. Eleanor studied them both, her expression softening into something like sympathy. Perhaps it's time to give them something they can't dispute. A wedding. Mother, we can't just... Not a real one, Eleanor clarified. Not yet, but an engagement party, something public and undeniable. Invite the board, key shareholders, the press. Mia's analytical mind was already working through the logistics. It could work. A public declaration would make it harder for Gerald to push his narrative. Exactly. Eleanor beamed at her future daughter-in-law with approval. And I happen to know that the Botanical Garden has had a cancellation for this Saturday evening. One of my foundation's donors is on the board there. This Saturday? Archer repeated incredulously. That's in 3 days. I can make it happen, Mia said, with the quiet confidence that had solved countless seemingly impossible problems throughout their working relationship. She turned to Eleanor. We'd be honored to have your help planning it. As the two women began discussing details, with alarming enthusiasm, Archer sat back, watching Mia in wonderment. She'd always been exceptional at navigating complex situations, but seeing her with his mother, forming an alliance, making plans that went far beyond their original agreement, stirred something profound in him. Later that night, as they rode the elevator up to the penthouse in comfortable silence, Archer found himself studying Mia's profile, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the determined set of her jaw. What? She asked, catching his gaze. You were amazing tonight, he said honestly. She smiled, fatigue and something else, something vulnerable, evident in her eyes. It wasn't difficult. I like your mother very much. She likes you too, Archer replied. More than she's ever liked anyone I've dated. Well, we're not actually dating, Mia reminded him gently, as the elevator doors opened to the penthouse. Archer followed her inside, watching as she slipped, off her heels with that familiar motion that had become part of the rhythm of his days. Aren't we, though? He asked quietly. Mia froze, her back to him. What do you mean? We live together. We work together. We finish each other's sentences. We anticipate each other's needs. Archer moved closer, close enough to catch the subtle scent of her perfume. My mother's right. You've been right in front of me all along. Slowly, Mia turned to face him, her expression a complex mixture of hope and fear. Archer, this isn't part of our arrangement. Maybe our arrangement was just an excuse, he suggested, reaching out to cup her face with a gentleness that surprised them both. Maybe we both needed a reason to see what was already there. Her eyes searched his, looking for deception, for uncertainty, for the playboy billionaire the world thought it knew. She found only raw, unguarded truth. If this is still just business to you, Archer continued, his heart hammering against his ribs, tell me now, and we'll never speak of it again. Mia's answer wasn't in words. Rising on her tiptoes, she pressed her lips to his in a kiss that contained none of the performance of their public charade, only the genuine emotion they'd both been denying. When they parted, breathless and slightly dazed, Archer rested his forehead against hers. I'm beginning to think my grandfather's ridiculous marriage clause was the best thing that ever happened to me. Mia laughed, the sound bubbling up from a place of genuine joy. Don't let it go to your head, Mr. Blackwood. I'm still planning to negotiate extremely favorable terms in our real prenup. Archer's heart soared at the implication. I wouldn't expect anything less, future Mrs. Blackwood. From his perch on the back of the sofa, Austin observed them with what could only be described as smug satisfaction, as if he'd orchestrated the entire situation from the beginning. The New York Botanical Garden glowed with thousands of fairy lights, transforming the conservatory into an enchanted forest for Archer and Mia's engagement party. Crystal champagne flutes clinked, string quartet music drifted through the air, and the city's elite mingled among exotic blooms, all eager to witness the union of New York's most unexpected power couple. Eleanor Blackwood had outdone herself, orchestrating an event that screamed authenticity and old money elegance, the perfect backdrop for solidifying their relationship in the public eye. Every detail, from the hand-calligraphed place cards to the vintage champagne, had been chosen with meticulous care. In a secluded corner of the orchid room, Archer adjusted his bow tie, trying to calm the unexpected flutter of nerves in his stomach. Harrison watched him with barely concealed amusement. For a fake engagement party, you're acting remarkably like a real groom, Harrison observed, sipping his champagne. Cold feet already? It's not the engagement I'm worried about, Archer replied, his eyes scanning the crowd for Mia. It's the board vote tomorrow. Rutherford's been working the shareholders all week. Harrison's expression turned serious. Our sources say it's going to be close. Very close. Before Archer could respond, a collective murmur rippled through the crowd, heads turning toward the conservatory entrance. Mia had arrived, and the sight of her stole the breath from Archer's lungs. She wore a gown the color of midnight, adorned with subtle crystal beading that caught the light with every movement. Her dark hair was swept up, revealing the elegant curve of her neck. She looked nothing like the efficient executive assistant who had organized his life for 5 years, and everything like the woman who had gradually, irrevocably claimed his heart. Still think this is just business, Harrison murmured, noting Archer's transfixed expression. Archer didn't bother to answer, already moving through the crowd toward Mia. She spotted him, and the smile that illuminated her face made his heart perform a complicated maneuver in his chest. You look... Words failed him for perhaps the first time in his adult life. So do you, she replied, understanding perfectly. Her fingers straightened his bow tie in that familiar gesture that now carried layers of meaning. Eleanor appeared, beside them, resplendent in silver and clearly in her element as hostess. There you are, darlings. Everyone's waiting for the toast. She lowered her voice conspirationally. And the Rutherfords just arrived, looking absolutely furious. It's delicious. Sure enough, Gerald and Bianca Rutherford stood near the entrance, their smiles frozen and brittle as they surveyed the lavish celebration. Showtime, Mia whispered, taking Archer's arm with practiced ease. As they made their way to the center of the room, cameras flashed and conversations hushed. Archer was acutely aware of the weight of Mia's hand on his arm, the subtle scent of her perfume, the way she instinctively matched her stride to his. These small intimacies, once part of their charade, now felt preciously real. Harrison handed Archer a microphone, and the room fell silent in anticipation. Thank you all for coming tonight, Archer began, his voice steady despite the emotions churning beneath his calm exterior. Particularly on such short notice. But when you're certain about something, about someone, why wait? His gaze found Mia's, and the rest of the room seemed to fade away. The words he'd prepared suddenly felt inadequate, too calculated for the authenticity of the moment. Many of you have expressed surprise at our engagement, he continued, his tone more candid than the polished CEO voice he typically used for public addresses. Some might even question the timing or the circumstances. His eyes flicked briefly to Gerald Rutherford. But the truth is both simpler and more complex than The rumors suggest. Mia looked up at him, curiosity mingling with trust in her expression. The truth is that for 5 years, the most remarkable woman I've ever known has been right beside me, making me better, challenging me, seeing me. Not the billionaire, not the CEO, but the man. Archer took her hand, marveling at how perfectly it fit in his. I didn't plan to fall in love with Mia Chen. It wasn't a business strategy or a calculated move. A ripple of surprise moved through the audience at his candor. Even Mia's eyes widened slightly, though her hand remained steady in his. It was inevitable, Archer concluded simply, like sunrise after the longest night. The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Around the room, expressions softened. Camera flashes intensified, and even a few sentimental sniffles could be heard. Only the Rutherfords remained stony-faced, clearly sensing their narrative crumbling. Eleanor stepped forward with 2 champagne flutes, handing them to the couple. With a knowing smile. To Archer and Mia, she announced, raising her own glass. May your partnership, in business and in life, continue to bring out the best in both of you. To Archer and Mia, the crowd echoed. As they sipped their champagne, Mia leaned close to whisper in Archer's ear. That wasn't our rehearsed speech. I decided to go off script, he murmured back. Seemed fitting, since everything else about us has been wonderfully unplanned. Her eyes sparkled with emotion and the reflection of 1,000 fairy lights. Every word was true, wasn't it? Every single one, he confirmed, surprised by how right it felt to finally acknowledge aloud what his heart had known for longer than he'd realized. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of congratulations, strategic introductions to key shareholders, and carefully orchestrated photo opportunities. Through it all, Archer found his attention continually drawn back to Mia, the graceful movement of her hands as she spoke, the musical cadence of her laughter, the intelligence that animated her features during conversation. It was nearing midnight when Gerald Rutherford finally approached them, his expression carefully neutral despite the tension evident in his jaw. Quite the spectacle, Blackwood, he said, his tone clipped. One might almost believe you've genuinely reformed your playboy ways. Only a fool ignores evidence when it's presented, Gerald, Archer replied pleasantly. Something to consider before tomorrow's vote. Gerald's eyes narrowed. This changes nothing. The merger still makes financial sense, regardless of your personal situation. Perhaps, Mia interjected smoothly, her professional armor seamlessly in place despite the evening gown and champagne. But sentiment often influences financial decisions. I'm sure the shareholders have noticed how Blackwood Enterprises' stock has risen since our engagement announcement. It was true. The markets had responded favorably to the apparent stability their relationship suggested. Gerald's lips pressed into a thin line, acknowledging the point without conceding it verbally. We'll see you tomorrow, Gerald, Archer said, effectively dismissing him. As Rutherford stalked away, Harrison appeared at Archer's elbow. We just secured Yamamoto's proxy vote, he reported quietly. That puts us at a projected 51% against the merger, if everyone votes as committed. Mia's hand tightened around her champagne flute. That's too close for comfort. One vote could swing it either way, Archer agreed, his earlier euphoria tempered by strategic concern. Eleanor joined their huddle, her social smile never faltering despite the serious conversation. Perhaps it's time for your exit, darlings. Leave them wanting more, as they say in theater. Besides, she added with a knowing glance between them, you two deserve some time alone before tomorrow's battle. As they said their goodbyes, Archer felt the weight of tomorrow's vote pressing against the joy of the evening. He had built his entire identity around Blackwood Enterprises. The prospect of losing control of his company, his legacy, still terrified him. Yet, as they stepped into the waiting car, Mia's hand warm in his, he realized with startling clarity that his priorities had shifted. The company still mattered enormously, but it no longer defined him completely. Something else, someone else, had claimed equal importance in his life. "Penny for your thoughts," Mia said softly as the car pulled away from the garden. "I was just thinking about what really matters," Archer replied, studying their intertwined fingers. 6 months ago, losing control of the company was my worst nightmare. Now, she prompted. "Now I'm realizing that some things are worth more than corporate control." He met her eyes in the dim light of the car. "Whatever happens tomorrow, Mia, I want you to know that this, it's real for me. It started as business, but it's become the most important thing in my life." Mia's expression softened, vulnerability replacing her public persona. "When you asked me to marry you that night in your penthouse, I told myself it was just another job, the ultimate assistant's task." She smiled ruefully. "I was lying to myself. Even then, it was more." The car pulled up to Archer's building, but neither made a move to exit. "The contract," Archer said suddenly. "Our agreement for a 6-month marriage. I want to tear it up." Mia raised an eyebrow. "That's not very businesslike, Mr. Blackwood." "I'm not feeling particularly businesslike at the moment, Ms. Chen." He leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I'm thinking we might need a more permanent arrangement." Her breath caught. "Are you proposing? Again?" "Technically, I'm proposing for the first time," he corrected with a smile. "The last time was a business proposition. This is..." He paused, searching for words adequate to the moment. "This is me asking the most extraordinary woman I've ever known if she might consider taking a chance on a reformed workaholic who's only just learning what really matters." Mia's eyes shimmered with unshed tears. "That sounds suspiciously like a real proposal." "It is," Archer confirmed, suddenly certain. "Marry me, Mia. Not for 6 months. Not for the company. For us." Her answer was in the kiss she pressed to his lips, tender, certain, and full of promise. The morning brought the decisive board meeting. Archer and Mia arrived together, their united front no longer a performance but a statement of fact. The boardroom buzzed with tension, Gerald Rutherford's faction on one side, Archer's supporters on the other. As the votes were tallied, Archer found himself strangely calm, Mia's hand steady in his beneath the table. Whatever happened, they would face it together. "The final vote stands at 52% against the proposed merger," announced the corporate secretary, her voice cutting through the tension. "The motion is defeated." A collective exhalation swept the room. Harrison clapped Archer on the shoulder, triumph evident in his expression. Across the table, Gerald Rutherford's face darkened with barely suppressed fury. "This isn't over, Blackwood," he said, gathering his papers with jerky movements. "Actually, Gerald, I think it is," Archer replied evenly, "and I'd like to take this opportunity to announce some organizational changes." The room quieted again, all eyes turning to him. "Effective immediately, I'm appointing Mia Chen as Chief Operations Officer of Blackwood Enterprises." The announcement sent a ripple of surprise through the board. Her insight, strategic thinking, and unparalleled understanding of this company make her the ideal person for the role. Mia's eyes widened in genuine shock. They hadn't discussed this. "Additionally," Archer continued, "I'm implementing the employee welfare program that Ms. Chen designed last year, including expanded parental leave, educational subsidies, and profit sharing for all levels of employees." Several board members shifted uncomfortably, but none voiced opposition, not with the merger vote so freshly defeated. Blackwood Enterprises was founded on the principle that business can be both profitable and humane, Archer concluded, echoing his grandfather's original mission statement. "Under our leadership, it will continue to uphold that legacy." As the meeting adjourned, Bianca Rutherford intercepted them near the door, her perfect features contorted with thwarted ambition. "Enjoy your victory while it lasts," she hissed. "And your convenient little romance." Mia regarded her with surprising compassion. You know, Bianca, I hope someday you find someone who values you for more than your family's influence or your social connections. It's quite liberating. Bianca's mouth opened and closed without sound, clearly unprepared for anything but antagonism. Before she could recover, Mia led Archer away, her head held high. That was remarkably generous, Archer observed as they entered his office. Their office now, in a way. Considering how she tried to destroy us. Life's too short for unnecessary enemies, Mia replied with the quiet wisdom that continued to captivate him. Besides, I have everything she wanted. She smiled up at him, and some things she never even thought to want. Archer pulled her close, marveling at how naturally they fit together. Ko Chen, he murmured against her hair, has a nice ring to it. Almost as nice as Mrs. Blackwood, she countered, her eyes sparkling with happiness and challenge. That unique combination that had been drawing him to her long before he recognized it as love. I was thinking, Archer said, his tone deliberately casual, since we've already had the engagement party and the press is expecting a wedding anyway. Mia laughed, the sound bright and joyful. Are you suggesting we get married for real? For convenience's sake, of course. Purely practical, he agreed, unable to suppress his smile. Tax benefits, simplified paperwork, that sort of thing. Well, when you put it that way, Mia pretended to consider, her fingers absently straightening his tie in the gesture that had become their private shorthand for affection. I suppose I could be persuaded. Their playful banter was interrupted by Harrison's arrival, looking both triumphant and exhausted. Congratulations, you two, on everything. The vote, the promotion. He paused, his gaze moving between them knowingly. The real engagement. Is it that obvious? Mia asked. Only to anyone with eyes, Harrison replied dryly. So, what's next for New York's most surprising power couple? Archer looked at Mia, finding in her eyes everything he hadn't known he was searching for. I was thinking a small wedding. Family, close friends. On a beach somewhere, Mia added, surprising him. Away from board meetings and business deals. Barefoot, Archer suggested, warming to the idea. With Austin as ring-bearer, Mia laughed. Harrison watched their exchange with undisguised amusement. You two are nauseating, he declared. I've never seen you happier. As Harrison left them to their planning, Archer pulled Mia close once more, still marveling at how something that began as a calculated business arrangement had transformed into the most authentic relationship of his life. You know, he said, thoughtfully, I should probably send Gerald Rutherford a thank you note. Mia raised an eyebrow. For trying to steal your company? For forcing me to see what was right in front of me all along. Archer cupped her face gently. For giving me a reason to propose to the woman I didn't realize I'd already fallen in love with. Very romantic, Mia conceded, but perhaps save that particular sentiment for your vows, rather than a note to our corporate nemesis. Archer laughed, the sound free and unguarded in a way it had never been before. Have I mentioned that marrying my brilliant assistant was the best business decision I ever made? Former assistant, current COO, she corrected, rising on tiptoes to brush her lips against his. And future wife. The perfect merger, Archer agreed, kissing her properly this time, no longer caring who might see through the glass walls of his office. Some things were worth being transparent about. Outside the windows of Blackwood Enterprises, New York continued its relentless pace. Inside, two people who had found each other through the most unlikely of circumstances held on to their perfect match, a partnership founded on business but transformed by something far more valuable, love.